Well, hello. It's great to see so many people. We've got 63 people signed in now. Finding and going through family heirlooms and journals and artifacts, and with the help of her mother, she spent 6 years researching and writing the story of her grandmother, Blanche Estelle Spencer. She produced a fascinating story of a young woman's life and adventures in the early 20th century.
Well, welcome everybody. My name is Nancy Manise Hardesty. So this is the 118-year-old diary of my grandmother. Now from this book, we come to this one. We're going to be talking about hats today. The techniques that my grandmother learned when she went to hat making workshops were how to embellish the plain hat. Now this is indeed a riding hat, and this is the kind of hat that was made for the women who were riding in the Oklahoma State Fair in 1910, and that's one of the chapters of the book. Blanche was 14 years old when she was suddenly torn away from her family, put on a train, sent to St. Louis, Missouri with other orphans, and landed in Union Station. Now I want to begin to show you some of the research. There are 3 journals that I used to write this book. The first journal I just showed you, that is her journal, and I called that one the Bonnet Book Diary. This is the second set of historical records from my family. I wanted to give you a little bit of information about the Orphan Train program, which occurred between 1859 and 1929. The program was first started by a Reverend Charles Loring Brace, who was a Methodist minister. He wanted to get children off the streets of New York City. He negotiated with the railroads to ship a child across the country for $15. Between 1859 and 1929, approximately 300,000 to 350,000 children were shipped across the country from New York to as far as the Mississippi River. Later, this was called the Orphan Train program, and it was labeled as the largest child migration program in the world. Now I want to begin to pull you in to the chapter of the World's Fair. I wanted to show you the locations that the Roby family lived just around the time of the fair. The family went in the summer of 1904. They did not go at the early period of time. This is approximately the trip that they took around the fair. They came in at the entrance, which was not real fancy. There were low buildings here. They went inside here and went past the Wabash building. From this point forward, I think Blanche was overwhelmed by the fair. She was overwhelmed by the many people, the fancy dresses, the fancy buildings of the fair, everything so very different from her town of Oroville of 100 people in the cornfields of southern Missouri. The carts on this fair were huge, holding almost 100 people. I am sure Blanche had never seen anything as exciting as this in her entire life. She was very upset that her father sent her to St. Louis, but I think when she was up on top of the Ferris wheel, she began to realize why he had sent her to St. Louis, to see a bigger world and to see more history. And Blanche was turned loose to explore on her own, and this is what she found. She found the Rosenthal Sloan millinery booth. In the story in chapter 11, Blanche is just simply spellbound by all the hats she sees, and she's on the very first step of her life changing. Now we begin the rest of the story, and I just wanted to point out to you the many other pieces of research that I did. I hired a woman from Southern Illinois named Dr. Susan Whitemountain, and she helped me dig into further research venues to help me put together the spine of the story. Now I want you to look back at this. This is the ad from the 1904, the cookbook ad, which shows the Rosenthal Sloan gold medal hats. And this is the French millinery ad in the newspaper. Now notice the change. This is an elaborate and lovely hat in 1904. And by 1910, hats were even more dramatic, bigger, wider in size. And these would have been the kinds of hats that Blanche would have been making for the women in the grandstands. Several times when I have given this workshop, people have asked me if I actually knew my grandmother. And so I put this picture in to show you. This is a silhouette that was a cutout taken of Blanche when she went to a World's Fair or a state fair in Illinois. She took me to these fairs as a child, and that's part of the reason I was able to write the state fair chapter that's in the book. Additionally, I just wanted to encourage everybody in your group to look once again at your own family history. I've spent 6 years doing this, and I've had a wonderful time putting this story together. Who knows? You might find a hat maker, you might find a diary, you certainly might find an interesting story of your own family.